All right, so welcome. My name is Charles Obiakor. In case you don't already know, I am a Northern Illinois University graduate student. My second year in higher education and student affairs. But before I get into that, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background without getting into too much information. So I've made it very clear I'm Nigerian and Jamaican, born in America. I like all cultures across the world. I mean, I'm proud to be who I am. I know, who exactly who I am, and I'm aware of my culture. The Igbos, if in case you don't know, are from the Biafra. They were wanted to have a separate ethnic group. No, no, no. They wanted to have a separate region called Biafra. They wanted to separate from Nigeria because a lot of times, even though many Igbos are in powerful positions and many of them are hardworking people, they were facing a lot of discrimination from a lot of the other surrounding ethnic groups in Nigeria. Now, listen, I don't care what ethnic group somebody is. I don't care what religion somebody is. I don't discriminate. I personally don't discriminate. Nigeria has, of course, other ethnic groups like the Yoruba, the House of Fulani, the Ija. And even though sometimes there's internal conflict between the Igbos, and even though sometimes the Igbos don't get along with each other, and there's certain ignorant factors of between the Igbos, that's not always the case. Many Igbos do get along, and whether it be inside of Nigeria or outside of Nigeria or whatever the case may be. I'm proud to be an Igbo and Jamaican and American. I mean, personally, I would love to go to Nigeria at some point later on. And get what I have to get done. See family, etc., at some point gradually down the line. I've been to Jamaica. I love Jamaica. And of course, Jamaica has rich, not only Black history, but has the Native American history, the Tainos and Caribs, European, Spanish, Portuguese, French, English. Then later on, the indentured service from India and China. Then, of course, Nigeria. You have the Christian influence from the South, from the Spanish and the English, and some French here and there, and Portuguese. The traders, the who came down there. Unfortunately, there was a lot of negativity. I get it. There was the slave trade and there was wars, and even though in West Africa you had different sides selling each other and fighting tribes, like different tribes would fight each other, and then the winning tribe would sell the losing tribe. Losing tribe would a lot of times fight back, and I know it was happening throughout Africa, from Sierra Leone to Togo to Benin to Ivory Coast to Cameroon to Nigeria to DRC Congo. You would always have different tribes fight each other, and sometimes the winning tribe would sell the losing tribe. That doesn't mean the losing tribe would lose all its members, just that it's just a constant back and forth. Same thing with the Arab enslavement of the other side. You know, you have the Arab influence of the north, the Islamic influence. The House of Fulani of northern Nigeria are mostly Muslim. They have an influence from the northern part of Africa, from Morocco to Tunisia, Algeria. They traded with the Arabs of from across the Sahara, but also the Tuareg and the Amazigh. So they have that Islamic influence. So you did have Igbos and Yorubas who were enslaved by Arabs, but then some of the Igbos and Yorubas sold themselves. The list goes on and on and on. Of course, that's the past. That's the past, and one of the issues with Africa, is tribalism and corruption. You have different tribes, different identities, people looking at each other, and people, sharing different identities. That doesn't mean it's everybody though. Most Africans get along. So you could have a Nigerian, say for example, and who they are. You could have an Ethiopian. You could have a Rwanda. You could have a Hutu. You could have a Tutsi. You could have somebody from the Tuareg for the group. You could have a Congolese. You could have an Egyptian. You could have Morocco. You could have an Angolan. You could have Mozambique, a Zimbabwean. You could have somebody from Ivory Coast. You could have somebody from South Africa. You could have a Zulu. You could have somebody from so many different ethnic groups. You have a Xhosa, you can have somebody who's a Sudanese, who's black South Sudanese, a Dinka, a Nuer. You can have a Arab Sudanese. You have mixed black and Arab Sudanese. You know, there's been a lot of different conflicts. Hopefully there could be something that could be done about what's happening to the Nigerian Christians. I know that there are Muslims that get persecuted in Nigeria as well. And of course, some Christians attack Muslims in Nigeria as well. It's not just Christians that get attacked. Christians get attacked by Muslims, though, House and Fulani herders. But sometimes Muslims get attacked by Christians too in Nigeria, whether it be certain Igbo or Yoruba groups. But a lot of times it's the Muslim, House and Fulani, attacking Igbos and Yoruba. And I'm going to get into my video in a minute about what I'm really trying to get into. But just bear with me. I have to explain some things. Um, So those are the local situations in the local context. Right now, you have the RSF, which is a bad militia group of people attacking Black African in Darfur. Hopefully, there can be something about it. They're funded by UAE, United Arab Emirates, and then there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now in Africa. Um, there's the politics in Tanzania. So everywhere you go, you're gonna have your pros and cons. Rwanda right now is having a struggle with DRC Congo with the M23. Fighting against the Congolese government. But if you really do your research, it goes back to what happened in 1994 in Rwanda when Tutsi rebels known as the Rwandan Patriotic Front had to fight the Hutu government in Rwanda in 1994, before, during, and after 1994. And then, there were a lot of back and forth fighting and unfortunately, massacres and persecution that took place, which I'm not going to get into details, and so on and so forth. And then, you have these local things happening in Africa. So there's already these divisions. But then you have the global part of it, like the World Bank. You have stuff that are happening. So why? So one would ask me or anybody else who's interested and enthusiastic in this matter, why do I talk about all these things? Well, it's important to know who you are and who you are and yourself and your surroundings. Even me as a Nigerian and Jamaican, I can come across Jamaicans and many of them are great people. I'd say most of them I've had great encounters with as far as how I've dealt with them. Most of the Nigerians I've dealt with have been nice. I would go to the Obuduku events. These are great people. But then sometimes you have a little bit of ignorance, and some people don't understand me because I might have my American accent, or because I'm not full-blooded Nigerian Igbo, or because I'm not full-blooded Jamaican. So I kind of have to fit in. And you could have like an Igbo who's mixed with Canadian, or Igbo mixed with Brazilian, or Igbo mixed with French. Igbo is Igbo. We're all proud people, but then sometimes there's differences between those that are mixed and those that are full blooded. But that's not always the case, and but I want to get into also another issue here. As you relate to all these things, and as you look at the color, like between black and white, and as you look at all these things, first of all, everybody has the right to a great quality education. Everybody has the right to wake up, get to where I have to need to, get to work, because that's really what we have to want to do at the end of the day. We're not trying to have things affect our ability to function at our greatest ability. We want to be able to have access to healthcare when we have worked hard for it. I'm not talking about people that give up and have malicious intentions, that don't do the right thing, that don't pay their taxes, that do the wrong things. Those are people that, in my opinion, don't deserve what they're getting. Those are people that deserve to be corrected for their behavior and to be, whether it be, I don't know, I guess you could say punished, or who need to be corrected, who say, hey, you can't keep taking advantage of people who are taking advantage. But for those that are everyday people that are working hard like me, or trying their best, we deserve our rights to have our access to healthcare, economy. We have our rights to have our fair share of what we work hard for. But when you have lingering issues like tribalism and corruption, then you have racism, then you have white supremacy, then, because, black people can be racist too, don't get me wrong, but then you have white supremacy, and you have, all these other things that happen. When you think about it, everybody loses when racism happens. And which is going to lead into my next argument and my next paper. Who do you think really loses when racism happens? And of course, there's tribalism, there's corruption, there's ignorance, there's corruption, there's greed, there's jealousy, there's all kinds of stuff that happen. Even when you look at what's going on with the LGBT community, the same way that they can be, victimized, they can also be victimizers. They can be bullies too. So you see this with every community, you see this with every race, every religion, but then a lot of times, still us black people, we face a lot of oppression, even though a lot of times we oppress each other. I've discussed it in the video about what happens between the black and the black African community, and the black Caribbean black community, and the black African American community. But we still have these greater forces like of white supremacy that we deal with. Again, I've made it very clear, and I don't have to keep explaining it. I'm not saying all white people are racist, but a lot of them still are to this day, and they benefit, and they still continue to do things. Many of them are great people, hardworking like anybody else, but a lot of them are benefit and do things that are unfair to other people. So, But do you think that, what do you think? Do you think that they are benefiting when they continue to engage in these racist behaviors now that it's about to be 2026 and we still have a world that is filled with these kind of behaviors? When in reality, it doesn't. So I'm going to now present to you and kind of segue into a new topic it's called, well, it's not really a new topic. So I've already been discussing these things already. I already talked about how racism can be harmful, just as to the victim and the victimizer. But I want to talk about racism and who loses when it happens, because everybody loses. And this is from a volume of Multicultural Learning and Teaching. This is from my father. His name is Dr. Festus Obiakor. He's from the Igbo ethnic group. He's Nigerian. Mom's Jamaican. She was working with as a counselor, helping students and to help them maintain their college degrees. Program coordinator in Academic Opportunity Center. University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. Where my father was a full professor of, and still is, was a full professor of special education. Was a full professor of special education, and he writes books. He's a very intelligent man, and so these are some of the executive editors' comments. And before I get into it, my father went through the Biafran War in Nigeria. He was young, and he's from the Igbo ethnic group. He saw a lot of terrible things that were done to his people, the Igbo people. Millions that were, not only killed but tortured, starved, all kinds of things. Kwashiorkor, he saw it to his father, who was my grandfather. So when you have these things, it is the nurturing that a child can go through can affect their ability and affect how they would think. And that's why racism and ignorance and jealousy and greed and all these things are ignorant. The things that we put out in our media, in our schools, we have to be careful. So let's get into this. So who was my dad? Professor Festus Obiakor. He was a full professor of special education. And one of the things he remembered when he came to the United States from Nigeria is that people would oftentimes ask him like silly questions like, where did he learn to speak English? How did he learn to dress so fashionably? Are there buildings in Nigeria? What's it like living with animals in the jungles? Is Africa a small country, even though it's a big continent? It's not a country, it's a continent of 56 nations. What's it like to live in the huts and all this other stuff? And it's interesting because people will have all these ignorant things, and that shows you a function of how society operates. How you have all this ignorance, that's whether it be through the media, the schools, and that's not good, because you have people that are learning things that are false information that they learn from these things, and then it gets perpetuated through media, through information. Sometimes you're not getting all the information that you need that's in these such circumstances. And I took my notes and I just wanted to discuss these things with you. So there are those that victimize others with racism, according to my dad. And this is from the article is called Volume of Multicultural Learning and Teaching. Is called Racism and Who Loses When It Happens. The author is, according to my dad, who's the author, Festus Obiakor, from 2025. So those that victimize others also suffer circumstances as well. Because when you're victimizing others with racism or whatever your ignorance or stupidity, but especially racism, nobody benefits. Even the people that are quote unquote racist, they don't benefit either, because this is what you're doing. You're destroying society. You're destroying jobs. People will lose jobs. People get sued. Society goes down. You don't have, next thing you know, health infrastructure goes down. When you have people that are bullies like that, these are people that are usually closed-minded and are ignorant, and they're not doing too good. It is an environmentally induced behavior. You can't be born racist. It's kind of like somebody's sexuality or somebody's, like mental illness or something like that. Although some mental illness can be genetic because of something that happens in your genes, but a lot of times your environment induced, whether it be how you were treated from your parents or how you decided to act or how you were raised or what's happening in your environment, whatever you went through in your neighborhood, whatever, these are environmentally induced that can encourage somebody to be racist. So when you grow up in the circumstances like where millions of people are dying, like my dad saw, that can make somebody to be very depressed. And I can see where my father is coming from and how he felt. That's why the Igbos have been feeling like they have need to survive. And they have you look at what's happening with Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, Although I don't agree with the IPOB's decision to arrest people who are simply going to the market or oppress some of their own Igbos, I do agree with the fact that Igbos need to defend themselves from a society from Nigerian government that oftentimes discriminates against them. So when you look at what's happening with the Igbo community, it's understandable that they feel the way they feel because they have the majority House of Fulani. Listen, I don't have nothing against the House of Fulani, even me as a person. I'm telling you right now, but a lot of them are very hateful of the Igbo because they're Christians, and they're majority Jew, and a lot of them Muslims, and some of these Muslim groups like the Boko Haram and ISIS. And listen, I have nothing against Saudi Arabia. I love Saudi Arabia, the culture of people, but let's just be honest. A lot of the Saudi Arabia officials, and a lot of the Arab institutions fund the Al Qaeda and ISIS and Boko Haram. Even when you look at the situation between Israel and Palestine, listen, I'm not trying to take sides. Both sides have been terrible in the conflict. There was a genocide against the Palestinians, just like how it was genocides because Native Americans also have been genocide against black people. This have been local wars between Hutu and Tutsi and all these. Listen, I understand that. But remember now, there was an attack against Israel on October 7th, and it's been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, Israel, are they right with their way and their methods? No, not necessarily. But then again, remember now, a lot of the terrorists, Hamas, Hezbollah, hide among civilians, and it's not just the fact that Iran supports Houthi, which is also a terrible group that is attacking people. You also have Saudi Arabia, which backs and funds ISIS and Al Qaeda. So you got to look at both sides to it. So again, I'm not saying it's all Iranians. I'm not saying it's all Saudis. I'm not saying it's all Palestinians, all Israelis. But you have your good and bad no matter where you go. But you got to understand the dynamics of being an Igbo in this situation and what's happening here with the Hausa and Fulani Muslim herders. So, I'm sure you've heard of what Nicki Minaj was doing. Now, do I agree with her platform or where she's going? I don't necessarily agree. I'm more of a Barack Obama supporter because I feel like Barack Obama was doing everything right from Paris Climate Accord to Obamacare to Pell Grant. I feel like he was trying, but a lot of his reforms he tried, but a lot of times Republicans, even some so-called Democrats who were supposed to be in his team, wouldn't vote for what he was trying to do and put things in his legislation. So let's put things in perspective. So my dad, who's an Igbo, grew up Catholic, and of course, if you know the history of southern Nigeria, you had a lot of traders from Europe that would come down there. Unfortunately, there were slave people who were enslaved or were brought from Africans who were brought on as slaves from those areas. But you did have the spread of Christianity, because those are the Europeans that came by there, saying sometimes by force, sometimes, but he was a devout Catholic from a devout Catholic family, and one of the things that was ironic was that he would come to America, and according to him in 2025 from the book Multicultural Learning and Teaching. You had a lot of these fundamental Christian churches, which oftentimes had white supremacists in there, and it was weird because he was trying to be friendly, and as an African man, as a Nigerian man, and then you would see these churches, which goes back to the concept of what I'm saying. Racism does not. Everybody loses because you had these white fundamentalist Christians trying to be racist towards them, yet they're promoting the church. How are they helping the church? How are they benefiting the church when you want to promote the church and promote the goodwill of the church, but you're actually harming the church's message if you're going to be racist towards somebody else? You see what I'm saying? How does that help? That's what I'm saying. Just like how when you have students with their ignorant stuff asking my dad, did he come from a hut? Did he do this? Did he do that? Did he live with wild animals? That's mutually offensive and stupid because I'm sure they went back to themselves and said, "Wow, I must have been dumb," because they saw he was successful. He was doing what he had to do, and those that victimize others also have that stupidity coming back to them in their mind. There was even a proverb that my grandfather or my dad's dad told my dad. He said, "When a cow mother," and this is according to him for 1225 from the article, when a cow mother eats some grass, the children would look at what the mother cow has in her mouth, which basically shows you that whatever you teach your kids, whatever society spews out for the youth to follow, the youth will follow, the kids will follow, which is kind of like the concept of whatever is put out there will cause like a domino effect. So when you are spewing racism and you're spewing these things, it's not benefiting society, it's only continuing the pattern that you had before. And as far as kids and parents, this is what I think about kids and parents. Um, I think that parents have to instill discipline in kids in a positive way, just as long as they're not being abusive. While kids need to listen to parents. Kids need to obey their parents. As long as they are obeying the responsible things, listen to their heart, but then they still need to learn to obey parents. Kids should not, be abusing parents and all that, and then parents should not be abusing their kids. Although I can't save the world, I'm just saying this is just my personal opinion. So let's go a little bit further. And again, like I said, I took my notes, so I just want to go a little further just to discuss this with you. So, like I said, both the victim and the victimizer lose. Hating somebody for no reason, according to my dad, Dr. Festus Obiakor, who's my father, who does not know you or hate you, is a sign of not only close-mindedness, but also weakness, sadness, ignorance, misery, and imbalance, emotional imbalance, mental imbalance. Most people that are who hate people are usually very unhappy, insecure, lonely, isolated, and psychologically debased. People who usually and this is just from what I know and from what I notice, people usually make a conscious decision to engage in negativity, whether racist or ignorant or something like that, are usually just asking for trouble. They usually are trying to create problems, or they usually don't have anything. These are people that are usually just out of luck. They're just like, and you can tell that they are hurting somehow, so they want to put their hurt on somebody else. And that's one of the problems. We as a global society, should be given to take our actions more seriously. And this is where it gets into my solutions. We have to learn to be working in cohesive ways to work with each other to combat these things. Of course, everybody's not going to get along with everything, but that's why we should learn to be more observant and accountable and stop these behaviors from getting out of hand. You're going to have mental illness no matter what, you're going to have it, but there's a way to solve them, whether it be problems like racism, white supremacy, xenophobia, religious discrimination, linguistic supremacy, tribalism, corruption, whatever it may be. And I added the tribalism and corruption because that's something that's also serious. But white supremacy, xenophobia, these are serious things. We have to go. We're right now we have our education and economic systems, according to Dr. Obiakor, my father. Our education and economic systems are going through serious challenges, and we need to be progressive and accountable, like I said. And in my opinion, through multicultural and productive education systems and uplifting people with knowledgeable information and diverse subject matter, because we have a diverse world. And I just want to say, just like the article, I just want to say, just like in the article, Father, the article again. Just want to quote it again. This is from the volume of Multicultural Learning and Teaching. It's titled "Racism: Who Loses When It Happens." Again, everybody loses. So let me make that very clear. Everybody loses. The victim gets oppressed, and then they become probably the oppressor. Then the person that victimizes is also losing because they're not helping the situation. They're not benefiting society. And then what happens when your kids grow up? How would they function in society that's multicultural? What's going to happen to them? It's just going to continue the cycle over and over and over. So again, just much like his father said, this is an article, he said, thank you to Degrader Publishing for the volume, and I'm going to say thank you to them as well, Degrader Publishing. Thank you my father, Dr. Festus Obiakor, who was a full professor of special education, still writing books, and thank you my mom, Miss Pauline Harris Obiakor. She was a program coordinator of Student Technology Services, also working in Academic Opportunity Center at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. My father worked there too. He worked at several universities, Dosel University, City College, New York. He has taught at many different schools, wrote many books. He even happens in good schools. He's, done, so many good schools. So he wrote so many good schools, 100 multicultural proverbs. So, appreciate everybody for watching this video with me, and I want people to again use critical thinking to solve things. The whole purpose, I guess, is to use common sense. There is actually a book called 100 Multicultural Proverbs. I hope I said that right. It's Hotel Multicultural Proverbs. If not, I'm gonna look back at it. It's a book that my no. 100 Proverbs. I'm gonna look at it, but anyway, I'm gonna send a video of that. Not 100 protocol proverbs. Excuse me. 100 proverbs. There's a book on 100 proverbs my father wrote, Dr. Festus Obiakor. It's a very good book. I'm gonna talk about it in the next video. But anyway, thank you very much to all of you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Enjoy your holidays. Have a good day. And this is Charles once again. Thank you.